Today I wanted to run through very quickly at a plugin that I've been currently working on. It's not a finished plugin. I'm still currently exploring the options, but I thought it might be worth just posting this video. So the goal of this video is we will use the OpenAI Codex to connect with Revit using MCP. And really the challenge which I've been trying to solve for a few months now after using the MCP with the Cloud desktop is that user may have multiple Revit versions open or may have a Revit version may have multiple instances of projects being open. And I want to have the control on the commands that the user would have access to. And at the same time, want to give more flexibility from a chat interface perspective to understand which command to be executed and for which session of Revit. If you visit the OpenAI Codex documentation, it will explain you the process of setting up the MCP server. So if I just quickly go through this window, this is the page to that link that can help you to understand how to connect to the MCP server. And really the only difference, the way that you do the connection between a Cloud desktop versus the OpenAI Codex is the configuration file. So the Cloud desktop, it uses the JSON file for configuration, whereas OpenAI uses the Tom's obvious minimal language. So it's an extension which is .uml. Rest most of the information you may be able to get it through the documentation. As I was saying earlier, user may have multiple versions of Revit, and I wanted to build this bridge so that I can cover from Revit 2024 to 2027 version. At the same time, the models are constantly changing, right? So you may be at a very specific view and asking to extract the information from that view or maybe do a selection for that specific view. Whereas you may have multiple views open or multiple Revit versions open. So the the AI should not guess which version or which model or which view to access to. And finally, the governance around it, right? I wanted to have more flexibility when it comes to the execution of the tool and have some visibility to the user to understand which commands are safe to execute, whereas which commands could be destructive. So this is a plugin that sits within Revit now. It has few commands, and the very first one is the start command, which means that user can start the connection. So when you hit the start button, it basically bridges the connection with the codecs. And when a user says stop, which means that don't want to have a connection with that Revit instance with the codecs, then the stop should basically remove that. The tools and the statuses, it basically exposes the various commands and the sessions. And the metrics is just to understand like how many times that the command has been executed and if there is any failure or what is the behavior of those commands. So this ribbon, it just gives I mean, I've tried to keep it very simple, but this gives the user with some level of information about those various commands. And a help section that explains the user about the various commands. Session awareness is one of the other foundation of this plugin. is to just ensure that the bridge exposes the right versions of Revit, the process ID, the session ID, and the control of the prompts to the relevant session. So when we look into the live demo, I'll quickly run through with some of the configurations that you can actually do within the prompt. Okay. So this is just an example. So R24 is just a Revit version, Revit 2024, and then 2025. I should be able to understand what's the status of that specific instance of the view, and every instance of Revit should basically have a session ID. So R25, which means that it's the Revit 2025 version, and that's the session ID. So if I have another Revit session open, then that session ID would eventually change. And for this demo, these are some of the commands which are currently available. We'll see this within the demo. So in order to execute the command, user opens Revit, also opens Codex, and choose the version that they wanted to run the specific command or query on, and that should be it. So let's look into an example of this workflow. So now let's explore the demo. If I look into the tools here, I have a list of commands which are currently available. This is just for the testing purpose. I can group them based on the type of command it is. So if I wanted to just look for the commands which are for querying, I can toggle this for query, or if there is any specific commands which are available for selection. Okay. So this way, once you have more commands, it is easier for a user to filter this based on this tool set. Every command has a mode to say that whether if that command is read-only or if it's going to change the model or if it is just a change into the UI selection. So in this instance, this is just going to perform the selection within the model. So it's just a UI change here and a description to say what exactly that specific command is. And we can copy that name of the command. So in this instance, I will just say, I'll just copy this get current view and I'll close this. Okay. The status shows whether if the server is connected. Currently, it's not because I have not triggered the start event. The status is currently stopped and there is no active session. And the metrics is usually to understand the usage of the command. And with the slide, I was talking about the prompts. So the prompts, users should be able to configure the prompt. At the same time, with the help of the session ID, so user can have the flexibility to customize this template based on a specific session ID. So if I now start the connection and look into the status, I knew that this is for the Revit 2024 version, and it tells me the process and what's the actual document name and to which view that I'm currently on and the status of this server, which is live. If I open another version of Revit, so this is Revit 2025 version, and if I look into the status here, right now for this specific version, there is no active session. So what I would do is I would just execute the start here. That will bridge now the connection with the codecs. And if I look into the status here, I can see that this is that specific session ID, and it tells me the document name and the view that I'm currently on. If I go to the codecs now, so here now, when we run this command, which is the list the Revit session, it's basically saying that there are two Revit sessions which are open, and it tells me the actual view name for those models. If I wanted to query for a specific Revit session, so in this instance, which is this specific model, where I have got a list of rooms here, I can use the active session ID and I can ask it to list the rooms which are available within that specific instance of Revit. So rather guessing of which specific model name or to which specific view, what we can now do is we can control this chat interface with the help of the session ID. So it currently says that the session ID is valid, but Revit canceled the direct query because multiple windows are open. So I'm selecting the Revit 2024, then I will ask for the room again. Again, as I said, this is not a finished product, so it may have some bugs. But the idea is that we will use this specific session ID to execute it. While this is executing, what I wanted to also show you is the metrics. So how many times a specific commands has been executed. So it tells me the number of times that this command has been called for and the failure rate for those commands. So earlier when I tried to run it few times, it didn't work, but managed to figure out a solution. Also, I have a metrics around for Revit 2024, how many times that the commands have been ran for, and for 2025. And if I look for the status, it's still the live model. So hopefully by this time now, I can see that there are currently four rooms that are currently being placed within that specific model. And if I go back again, let's say if I wanted to get the room summary, I should be able to use this specific. So, okay, so that tells me the total area for those specific rooms which are available within the model. So this is it for this video. Hope you find this useful.